Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Harbor Management Commission meeting, May 26, 2020. I'm Kim Taylor, the chair, and let's get started, and I'll call the roll. Mark Foster. Harry French.
I'm here.
Great. Ted Schwartzman.
I'm here.
Great. Jack Hirschler. Okay. Eric Sunman. Sam Cargill. Libby Tischler. Jeff Stedman.
I'm here, Kim.
Great, Jeff. Betty. Well, we don't have a quorum yet, so we need Mark or Jack or Eric or Sam or Libby to check in.
Ed Billings just checking in.
Oh, Ed, I'm sorry. Yes, great. Has anyone else just joined the call? Mark?
Jack is here.
Jack is here?
Yes. I was on mute. I didn't realize. I thought I had I was muted.
Mark Foster? Eric Sunman? Sam Cargill? Libby Tischler? Should we wait another few seconds?
It's too nice a day out there.
Jack, did you have fog this morning?
Not too much. I was lucky.
Good. Good.
Hi, Kim.
Yes?
It's Betty. I'm sorry. I was talking. I didn't hit unmute, so you didn't hear anything I said, which is maybe a good thing. So far I have Kim and Jack. Is there anyone else that has joined the meeting?
We have Harry and Ted as well.
Oh, Harry.
Okay.
And I believe
Yes, Betty.
Jeff Stedman and Ed Billings.
And Ed Billings, but Mark Foster? No Mark. Eric Sunman? Sam Cargill? Libby Tischler? Well, there are four commissioners.
Kim, it's Mark. Did you hear me?
Oh, no, we didn't, but I'm glad you're here, Mark. Great. Okay, let's get this meeting to order, to rolling here. Our first item on our agenda is to approve the February minutes. Were there any questions, concerns about the minutes as written? If not, could I have a motion to accept them as they were submitted?
I'll make that. It's Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is that Ted?
It is.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Okay, moving right along. The chairman's report. February 24th, we had a notice from DEEP about waiving requirements for the Tooney Road, Ash Creek project that's not in our jurisdiction. April 3rd, I participated with the Harbor Master, with the town emergency management team during a discussion of how we were going to manage permits and people at a time when all the public recreation facilities in Fairfield were closed. On April 3rd, that same day, I followed up with Christopher Smith, Commodore of Pequot, since his operations would definitely be impacted by the harbor master's decision. On April 30, we had another communication from DEEP about the Ash and Turney Creek project. On May 2, the Commission sent a letter to Katie Dykes, a commissioner at DEEP, requesting an extension of the permit to dredge in the lower Wharf area. On May 15th, she responded. We got a one-year extension, and this will be the last extension for that permit that DEEP will grant. On May 18, we got an email from Mr. Furlong to the harbor master and to us, requesting that his commercial fishing mooring permit be renewed, and we can take that up under new business. And on May 19th, we got a letter from Race requesting a letter from the Commission to DEEP saying that we have no objection to Pequot Yacht Club pursuing the permitting of the floating whaler and ideal docks. So that's my report. Ed?
Thank you, Kim. Good to be aboard. Highlights since our last meeting, as you're all aware, I sent out a letter indicating that mooring permits would be delayed this year due to COVID. That went very well. I was received quite nicely by the general boating population, and as we're all aware, things have loosened up a little bit. So there is access to Yee Yacht Yard and the entire mooring system in Southport Harbor. In terms of moorings, I know Jack will touch on this even in more detail, but we have 115 currently permitted. We've got a couple that are in transition, and we're going to be adding a few more to the North Anchorage in the next week to 10 days. So I fully expect us to be at full capacity in the low 120 range. Working hand in hand with Jeff at Pequot Yacht Club, trying to get the mooring maintenance straightened out, and we've had several communications with Brad regarding that. One concern from a number of boaters in Southport is the July 15th deadline, which we can either take up now or add that to new business. They essentially would like to have that relieved. What else? And I mean, you mentioned Mr. Furlong. Other than him, everyone seems happy. I've received a number of phone calls about the system in general. People are very happy with it. It seems to be working quite nicely. And we will be addressing his issue as well. I think that's about it for me.
Okay. Lower Wharf project, Jeff.
Okay. And if you hear some background noise, I apologize. There's a shop underneath my office, and they've opened, and I guess they're having a party that they're quite happy about having open, and playing loud music. But the Lower Wharf report is that, as you mentioned, Kim, we have the extension of the permit for the dredging project, but only for another year. I've been talking with the town engineer, Mr. Hurley, and so we're going to work with the engineering department and the purchasing department to amend the bid notice that went out 2 years ago, and to put that out, Mr. Hurley thinks, is by the end of June. So we have to amend the bid notice to call for the disposal of the material at the Central Long Island Sound disposal site. And, of course, that means we have to find a source of cap material. And I guess that will mean, I don't guess, it'll mean we have to coordinate and keep talking with the Corps of Engineers and DEEP to see if there are any other projects that will be dredging and using that disposal site, and that can serve as our cap. And I guess we will call the Guilford Yacht Club again and see if they're planning to dredge this year. So we've got the things to do is to revise the bid notice, put it out to bid, and then we'll have to see what happens, whether we can get a good contractor's response for a price that's within the amount that we still have left to do the project, and whether we can get a cap material as well. So
okay.
that's
Jeff,
where we are.
You're working with Mr. Hurley to make that amendment?
Yes. In fact, I talked with him again today. Race had put together the bid notice that we used previously, and that called for disposal at the Western Long Island Sound site, because that was going to be our only chance of doing the work.
Right.
So we have to look at that and see if there's anything more that needs to be done other than to change the dates and to just substitute the Central Long Island Sound disposal site for the Western Long Island Sound site. But we'll work on that in the next week or so.
Great. Excellent.
Good.
Sand management?
Well, you know that the Corps of Engineers has agreed to take the topographic survey that they did of the sandbar and superimpose on that the survey that they did of the channel, and superimpose on that the vegetation survey that we did, and then we'll generate some alternative, I guess you call it scenarios. In other words, if we dredge the channel to restore its 100-foot wide width, 100-foot width, where will the side slope go in the sandbar relative to the vegetation? How much of the vegetation would be disturbed? And then that will, of course, tell us how much of the impacted vegetation area we have to somehow mitigate for. So I've been talking with the Corps of Engineers project manager. Her name is Coral Siligato. And they're the Corps, those Corps people are all still working from home, and so she's said that their survey department has not got to the point of doing this yet, but she hopes they will in the near future. And they asked if I could go, in addition to the aerial photos we've provided, if I could take some current photographs of the sandbar and the vegetation, which I will do. I talked with Mr. Kojal, who's the country club's superintendent, and he said just let us know when you're planning to drive down there, but the best day to do that would be next Monday, when the club is not functioning as it is during this week. So I'll do that. That's not urgent because it's not holding up them doing the overlay and identifying the impacted grass. So that's our first step there of a project we've been working on, trying to for 30 years, and so we're still trying.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Jack, Mooring Committee?
Yes, the Mooring Committee held a virtual meeting on May 13th, and there are minutes of that meeting that were distributed to the commissioners and also posted on the town website, together with an audio recording of that meeting on May 13th. The committee discussed at our May 13th meeting some minor administrative changes to the online mooring system that had been requested in April by the Harbour Master to support his work based on his experience early in the experience of using online mooring system, and the vendor quickly put those changes in place for us in April. We also discussed the importance of moving forward to begin using the mooring tackle maintenance record-keeping capabilities within the online mooring system, and information about tackle inspection and maintenance has to be entered into the system by the tackle inspection and maintenance provider, which is Be Quiet Yacht Club. And our thinking at the meeting on the 13th is that the Harbour Master and Online Mooring and Jeff Engborg will work together expeditiously to implement this important piece of the system. And then finally, we discussed and decided to recommend to the full Harbor Management Commission that a vessel sign and some clothing marked to identify the harbor master should be authorized for purchase, so that vessel owners being approached in the harbor will recognize that it's the harbor master approaching their vessel. That's my report.
Great. Mr. Stedman, Harbor Management Plan update.
Well, I guess we should probably consider a committee meeting to decide how to proceed with that since we've not been able to have a in-person public meeting where we had intended to provide, a background information on what we're doing in an effort to solicit public input. So I don't know how we can proceed with rewriting the document. We've already gone through the policies once and the goals and objectives. So we can proceed, but the process we had agreed upon was, or thought was the right way to go, was to have a public meeting to talk about what we're doing and get public input, so that we wouldn't get in the position of having a public meeting to tell people, okay, we've already revised the plan. Here it is. We wanted to get some input before we had gotten too far, and that the presentation we put together about the history of the Harbor Management Plan that we intended would be maybe a good orientation, if that's the right word, for the newer members. That could also serve as our public presentation. But perhaps the best way to proceed now, of course, up to you, is to have a committee, the planning committee, to meet and come up with a strategy as to how to proceed in the next couple of months.
Okay, so why don't we plan to get together with schedule an online virtual meeting like this. Yes. with the committee to see if there's any way to move forward with any of this, and what makes the most sense. Okay. That's good.
Hey.
Ted,
Kim?
budget request?
Kim?
Yes?
It's Sam Cargill. I was on mute before, and I guess you didn't mark me as present. Sorry.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry about that. I was on mute.
Ted, budget request?
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. What I would like to do over the next couple of minutes is to update the Harbor Management Commission on where we stand with our budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. We initially submitted a budget request of $23,562, which represented a $1,400 increase over fiscal 2019-20. And all of that increase was really for the communication needs of the harbor master, basically to give the harbor master the type of communications that he should have, both phone-wise as well as having a laptop dedicated to the harbor master role. The Board of Selectmen approved that budget request on March 9th, 2020. And then after that, there was a pause for a couple months due to COVID-19, where nothing really happened until the Board of Finance met on May 11th. The Board of Finance reduced our budget request by $400, which was basically the increase that we had asked for in office supplies. So they rolled office supplies back to the level that we had in 2019 through 2020. So right now where we are is the Board of Finance approved a budget for us of $23,162, which continues to represent a $1,000 increase over the previous fiscal year, basically for the harbor master's cell phone needs. So the final step is the RTM meets on June 1st, 2020, to not only look at our budget request, but all the budget requests for the town of Fairfield as well as the Board of Education. And we should be hearing back after that June 1st meeting as to where we stand on our budget for 2020-21. And Kim, that's basically the update.
Appreciate that, Ted. Any questions for Ted?
No.
The RTM that's meeting on June 1st, have they had their committee meetings yet? Have an opportunity to talk to you, Kim, or others about our budget?
Ted, help me with this. I'm trying. We've had several starts and stops with the Board of Finance meetings, but I don't believe that we've been requested to appear before the RTM.
Got it. Normally they. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I believe you received an email, Kim, saying that if the RTM wanted to talk with us, we would have heard from them. And there were a couple days in the middle of May where that was supposed to take place.
Right.
And you and I never heard that they wanted to speak with us.
Right. Right.
So as a former RTM member, that's a good thing. And I think this is the best outcome considering what's happening. The RTM cannot add revenue or add to a budget. They can only reject the budget and question certain line items. So if they were questioning this line item, we would have heard something by now. That's just my view.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Yep.
So
okay, on to new business. The mooring committee has recommended that the harbor master have some kind of identification, clothing, sign for the boat, so that when he is on the water, people know who's approaching their vessel. And I'm open to ideas.
This is Harry.
Yep.
I would recommend that we get 2 signs and just put on them Harbor Master. They can be like a plastic sign with the tape-type letters, and perhaps a shirt or a jacket that would maybe blue with yellow lettering that says Southport Harbor Master.
On the back of the shirt?
On the back of the shirt, yeah.
Right, and big letters. I think that would work.
In large letters, yeah. Absolutely.
Large letters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I contacted Gerald Foley at the purchasing department just to find out if there were any requirements, any designs, any rules that we had to follow, and he said that he was the purchasing department has not ever been involved in any of that kind of design or activity, and so it appears that we could pretty much. That we're not constrained by any town rules or regulations at this point in the design.
So then that makes it easy.
Right.
And relatively inexpensive, simply because we can get a plaque maybe 4 inches wide and 18 inches long, and put Harbor Master on it with stick-on labels.
Does anybody have
like
any?
Put on a tender.
Does anybody have any contacts or ideas about how we could actually get this done?
You mean the shirts themselves?
Well, I mean the signs and the shirts and, suggestions about where to go.
The yacht club uses, I can't remember it. I know exactly where it is, but they use it for their uniforms and their T-shirts and things like that for the club. And I think they do signage there too. Is it Miniman Press? No, it might be something else. But it's in that sort of strip mall where Bodega is.
Okay.
I can look into that.
That's Minuteman Press.
That's it. That's where I would go, because they do all the yacht club gear themselves, and the junior yacht club as well. So they could probably silk screen, Harbor Master on the back, depending on what the colors are, something that's very visual, almost like a lifeguard sort of.
Yeah.
It says Harbour Master. You want to be intimidating a little bit too.
Right. Ed, do you feel comfortable following up with Jeff Engborg to find out where it is they go for that kind of gear or equipment?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of yachting places around. I mean, there's Captain's Quarters down in Port Washington. I'm familiar with them. They are a little on the pricey side. There's also a lot of the local fire departments, police departments use a company. It's right down on in Bridgeport, Capitol Ave, and it's right down in Capitol Ave. I forget the name of it. They also do shirts, embroidery, all of that stuff. I mean, regarding the signs, my initial thought was just to have someone print Harbour Master out in vinyl letters, and then get a piece of HDPE plastic, which is not brittle or sharp like a Lexan or plexiglass. So regardless of whatever boat the sign is used for, this year or years to come, with HDPE, the stuff is virtually indestructible, but yet it can have a soft edge.
Okay.
So are you like the
price-wise?
Probably like the plaques that they use for the inflatable boats and numbers.
Well, I mean,
similar.
The numbers. I mean, your registration numbers are 3-inch high letters. I'm not sure that that's really quite big enough, to be honest with you. I mean, I would say 4.5 to 5 inch. I mean, like Sam was saying, you want it to be intimidating, but it's like, we want it to be soft and friendly as well. So
sure.
Kim, I have
Ted.
a suggestion for you. It sounds like Ed has a lot of really good ideas. So what if we were to delegate him the authority to purchase what he thinks is appropriate to provide him with better identification as Harbour Master, and give him a budget to do that, and just have him run by you whatever it is he comes up with?
I think that's an excellent idea if Ed is comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. Can we have a motion to that effect?
Well, the only thing I just don't know what kind of budget we would need for that.
Well, I wouldn't do his due diligence, because I'm sure he could piggyback on any discount we get to the yacht club and or as a town official, through the the fire department, or with how they do it and they procure stuff.
Well, I think that we want to move ahead pretty quickly, because this is the end of May, and we won't be together again for at least another 3 weeks. So if Ed could get some of that, if not all of that, done before our next meeting, that might be a good thing.
Should we have a motion for? Right. Should we just say what we think the budget would be if we have our best guess now, and if it goes over, then Ed comes back?
I think that's probably a good place to start.
What the lettering alone costs for that, for the signs?
Are we talking more than $250, Ed?
I would say yes. To err on the side of safety, I would say yes.
So if
my gut feel for the sign alone, the vinyl lettering, you have to have someone make that up. That's probably going to be in the $100 neighborhood just for the lettering.
Right.
And a piece of plastic to go underneath it. I'm very friendly with Jim Carbone down in Bridgeport.
Sure.
Maybe he has some scrap laying around, or if he's willing to donate it, whatever. So I would say, the signage alone will be probably $150, $175, give or take.
So what if we
shirts,
say
clothing? I mean, if I could get a couple of polo shirts, that would suit me fine. I'm pretty frugal, as I think you all know.
Right. So we make a motion for $500, and he's going to come in well below that, just in case.
Oh, definitely.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Or because we trust your instinct. I would, Kim. I don't know if that's what. If we could do it that way.
$300, and if we need more, we can do more in June.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
at least
it's not going to
we'll
be
get
enough, Kim. I think that the sign alone is going to get us through almost 2/3 of that. So I think that the 500 number and then him using judgment might make more sense.
Okay, then let's go with I'm good with 500. Can we? If others okay with 500?
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize up to $500 for boat signage and shirt and some form of jacket to identify the harbor master.
Harry
Second.
moved. Okay, who seconded that?
That's Sam Cargill.
Thank you, Sam. Sam second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, that's excellent. So up to $500, Ed, for signage and identifying gear. That's
okay.
Great.
Thank you all.
Our next item is the Chris Furlong letter, and you all should have had a chance to take a look at that. It was distributed with the minutes. And as you saw is there anyone who didn't see it? Hasn't read it? Okay. As you can see, Ed responded, and he was the letter came to us vis-a-vis Rule 23 of our rules and regulations, which allow an aggrieved mooring holder to submit a request to the Harbor Management Commission to review the decision. Chris Furlong has, as you know, claimed to be a commercial fisherman, and Ed, in applying the other rule of our rules and procedures, which is Rule 6B, which outlines exactly what kind of boat and documentation a commercial fisherman must have in order to be privileged enough to jump to the head of the waiting list. Ed has responded to Chris's letter very specifically and very clearly. Does anybody wish to comment, review this further?
I would. This is Harry. I would like to also make a comment that the other day there was no flag on the American flagpole at the yacht yard, and I was led to believe that Chris Furlong provided a flag and put it up on the pole, since there was no American flag on that flagpole. Whether the town did not provide one or what, but he has provided a flag to put up there. He has also provided hoses and has done some repairs to the dock. And he's also been in the harbor probably at least 50 years.
Wow. Anyone else have a comment, response?
Did you want me to respond, Kim, at all? This is Ed.
Well, I think I think, Ed, that we have rules. you know, Rule 5 or Rule 6 is pretty clear. I think that you have applied that rule. You know, I understand that Mr. Furlong has been in the harbor for a long time, and that he certainly, you know, according to what Harry has said and what he says in his email, he has been he's tried to be a good citizen down there. But I don't know that we are in a position to say that if he gets to go to the head of the list, even though he doesn't meet the requirements of a commercial fisherman.
The only thing that I would say is, and I don't know when it became an issue, other than he's had a boat in the harbor as long as I can remember, and that has to go back at least 40, 50 years.
I guess my understanding, though, is that there was an interruption in his having it, and he applied in recent years to be on the waiting list as a commercial fisherman, and jumped ahead of other people a few years ago and got a mooring again in the harbor as a result of claiming to be a commercial fisherman. And what our harbor master is asking for is the required evidence that he in fact is a commercial fisherman, and we're still waiting for him to provide that. In the meantime, following our rules, the harbor master has reassigned that mooring to somebody on the waiting list who's been waiting for years. And if Mr. Furlong were to satisfy the requirements outlined in our rules and procedures to be a commercial fisherman and satisfies the harbor master, following our rules, he would once again receive priority placement for any available mooring that might become available. But until then, that's the situation.
I agree.
Might I say, this is Jeff Stedman speaking. Might I say something? And I don't know if this agreement was actually signed by the applicant or what the status is, but back in, I guess, 2016, the commission developed a I don't know what you want to call it, a statement of understandings and agreements for receipt of a mooring permit for commercial fishing purposes. And this was to be signed by applicants who received a mooring permit due to their assertion that they were commercial fishermen. So this agreement stated that I understand that I am receiving a 2016 Southport Harbor mooring permit pursuant to Section 6A of the Rules and Procedures. That section authorizes the harbor master, to the extent possible, to give special consideration to providing mooring locations for vessels used for licensed commercial fishing purposes. I hereby attest that I possess a current and valid State of Connecticut commercial fishing license, and that my vessel is 1, properly licensed for commercial fishing purposes, 2, equipped principally for commercial fishing purposes, and 3, will be used principally for commercial fishing purposes during the 2016 boating season. I understand and agree that if I fail to principally equip and utilize my vessel for commercial fishing purposes in the judgment of the Harbor Management Commission and Harbor Master during the 2016 boating season, my mooring permit may not be renewed for the 2017 season. And then there's a space for the applicant's signature and date. But that was the intent of the Harbor Commission. I don't know if Mr. Schuler has such a sign, but the intent was that possess a commercial fishing license, the vessel is properly licensed, equipped principally, and used principally for commercial fishing purposes. And I believe that I don't believe the DEEP supported that approach. Now, I don't know that it's probably not valid now. This probably hasn't been signed in past years, recent years, but that's the intent. I just don't know if that was signed. I don't know if that was signed by any applicants who received a mooring by virtue of it being commercial fishermen, not whether they provided help to the harbor or did other things, but whether they were commercial fishermen.
No.
Well, is it the what is the sense of from the commissioners? Is it are we bound by our own rules? Are we going to? I mean, should Mr. Furlong produce the documents and the materials that he's required to produce? The harbor master has offered him, will offer him a spot in the harbor. Until that time, he's in violation of our rules. It seems to me. Are we in agreement, or are we?
My understanding, Kim, is that the catch report is required for commercial fishermen to submit to the state. And the harbor master asked months ago for this applicant to provide the state-required catch reports the prior year, showing that he was engaged in commercial fishing. It's been asked for repeatedly, and the applicant continues not to provide that to the harbor master. And I don't see how we can, in good faith, believe that he's engaging in commercial fishing when that request has not been fulfilled for months. And I think that, the harbor master would be right to revisit this at such time when the applicant provides the required documentation that the state requires. And it's not just the license.
Well, can we have a motion then to basically support the harbor master's response to Mr. Furlong? At such time we agree with the harbor master's saying we agree with the harbor master's decision, and at such time as he complies with our rules and regulations as specifically as set out by the harbor master, he's certainly free to reapply for a commercial fishing license.
I don't know. Do you need a motion to support what Ed's doing because it's by the book and it's exactly what needs to happen?
Well, by our rules, Mr. Furlong has requested. He copied us on the email, and he's requesting a response. And I simply want to make it clear to him that we are supporting the harbor master's decision, and respond to him and not ignore him.
Absolutely. Totally understand now. I see what you're saying. I think you should have a motion to support the harbor master in his dealing with Mr. Furlong. I don't know how. Is there a second?
No second?
I'll second it. It's Jack.
Okay. All those in
and
favor?
who made the motion?
Sam made the motion, and Jack seconded.
Got it.
And the motion is to support the harbor master in his decisions and the reasons for his decision to not give Mr. Furlong a commercial fishing license, a spot in the harbor as a commercial fisherman.
And for discussion, Kim, just for discussion purposes, and I believe that Deep is on record as saying that supporting the harbor master's request for the catch record as a reasonable request to be made in the course of evaluating the mooring permit renewal application. So Deep, I believe, is on record as saying that that's a reasonable request to be made by the harbor master.
Great.
Of the applicant.
Any more discussion? Yep.
What I would do is I will get back to Chris Furlong and let him know that he needs to provide the catch report so that he can move forward.
Thank you, Harry. That's great. But we have a motion on the table.
Actually, I'm not sure. We should get Ed's input here, but the issues are more than the catch report. I believe there's a question about the sufficiency of the vessel for the purposes that it's being used for as a commercial fishing vessel. Ed, I don't know what your current thinking is on that score.
Well, you're right. The catch report is one of several items that I don't see that Mr. Furlong meets. There are special requirements for fishing at night because he sets nets. There's signage that's supposed to be on board the vessel. Specialized equipment that should be on board, in addition to catch report for prior year's fishing.
The registration is also problematic. I mean, he explained in his letter that it was a mistake, but our rules say it's supposed to be a commercially registered boat.
That's correct as well, yes.
All right.
So we have a motion to support the Harbor Master's decision. The Harbor Master cites in his response our Rule 6, which sets out a lot of what we're talking about in terms of requirements. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. So we will respond to Mr. Furlong and encourage him to comply with our Rule 6 and the Harbor Master's email to him. And finally, our new business, May 18 letter to us from Race. I'm going to ask Jeff Stedman, if you wouldn't mind, just to recap how it is we got here and basically what's the impact that our letter will have on DEEP.
Well, I'll try to not ramble on about this, but I guess the origin of this initiative goes back to the last year or so when the mooring committee was trying to make sure that all moorings in the harbor are properly permitted and authorized and in the right place with respect to the federal channel and the federal anchorage. And one of the reasons for doing this, besides good housekeeping and making sure everything is compliant with the rules and procedures and the harbor management plan, is to be able to attest to the Corps of Engineers that the harbor is, with whom we're working to hopefully dredge the entrance channel, to attest to the Corps that the harbor is managed in accordance with the Corps of Engineers open to all on equal terms policy. And among other things, that means that you don't have moorings in the federal channel, that moorings, the waiting list is open to all without consideration of the town of residence, and that all moorings have all the proper permits. All right. So when we were looking at this, there were several mooring floats that we had questions about. There's 3 floats, and these are floats that have historically been used by the yacht club. There's 4 floats known as the Ideal 18 floats on the east side of the harbor, and then on the west side, just south of the yacht club's marina, there's another float known as the Whaler float. And these floats have traditionally been permitted by the harbor master. But when we looked at these more carefully, and in an effort to make sure everything is done by the book, these floats are used exclusively by the Pequot Yacht Club. And as a result, they need more than just the permit from the harbor master. They need approval from the state of Connecticut as well. And we look back at in the So the old drawings that we prepared in 1994 showing existing conditions at the time, those drawings that were prepared by a professional engineer show 3 floats known as the Ideal 18 floats and the Whaler float. They don't show 4 Ideal 18 floats. They show 3. And the significance of that 1994 date, I'm sorry if this sounds complicated, is that if structures predate 1995, which has some significance for DEEP's regulations, then those structures, if they don't cause a problem with navigation or environmental problems and they're acceptable to the community, they can be authorized through a certificate of permission that doesn't, as an alternative to like a full permit application. And so when we pointed out these floats need additional authorization, not just the harbor master, but from DEEP, it was agreed for the mooring committee that the yacht club would apply for the necessary authorizations, and that's what the yacht club has done. And we can only demonstrate. I say we because I have these old maps that I shared with the yacht club. Those old drawings show 3, as I said, Ideal 18 floats and the 1 Whaler float. They don't show 4 Ideal 18 floats. So the DEP, as I understand it, and it's too bad Mr. Engborg can't speak now too.
Right.
The DEP will authorize 4 floats, Ideal 18 floats, if the yacht club takes out of the Whaler float the square footage equal to the 4th Ideal 18 float. So they can authorize all 4 of those floats, but the Whaler float would be reduced in size by the square footage of the 4th Ideal 18 float. So they've submitted a preliminary plans for doing this to DEEP. And DEEP now, and I've talked with a person at DEEP who's reviewing this, and we also have the request from RACE for this. DEEP is agreeable to processing this application, provided it's okay with the Harbor Management Commission. And my thinking is that the Harbor Commission should consider having no objection to this moving forward. And we can also refer, if you choose to, policies in the Harbor Management Plan that are applicable here. And one of the policies, when the plan was approved and adopted in 1995, one of the policies that's applicable is to maintain, and I'm reading it out of the plan here, to maintain the existing facilities and operations of the Pequot Yacht Club, including its boat slips and sufficient mooring locations as necessary for maintaining yacht club viability. And the other, I think, relevant policy with respect to permitting moorings in the harbor was, at the time when the plan was adopted, that existing moorings located and maintained in conformance with traditional town procedures should be retained. So I think a good argument can be made that it was the intent of the plan to continue to maintain these floats for the yacht club. Again, with the understanding that they're not located in the federal anchorage, they're outside of the anchorage. And then the additional consideration is that the Harbor Commission owns the mooring tackle. And this was something that when the Commission acquired all of the mooring tackle, not too long ago. So my thought is that the Commission could, in response to the Yacht Club's request, send a letter to DEEP saying the Commission has no objection to the club retaining these several floats. We can name them, with the understanding that they're outside of the federal anchorage, that the Harbor Commission will continue to own the mooring tackle, and that. I think that's that, and that the Commission will still have a chance to review the application when it's actually submitted to DEEP, and we also might want to add those 2 policies of the plan that I think supports this. So, but pardon me for going on and on about this, but that's my long-winded discussion or description of what's before us.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff?
Ken, it's not this is Ted. It's not a question. It's just really a comment. When I read Race's letter, I thought the position was very reasonable by Deep, the conditions that they set, the Pequot Yacht Club's response to those conditions and what they're proposing. And then when I just heard Jeff cite that he doesn't think there's any reason for the Harbor Management Commission to object, I would agree to that. And I thought what he cited as putting in the letter sounded very reasonable as well. So I would be very supportive of everything that was just discussed and is in the letter.
Yeah. This is Jack. I would agree as well. I think that everything that Jeff described is exactly how I feel about this.
This is Harry, and I would also agree.
Sam, Mark, comments?
I agree. I support the position. It's quite a drama going on. So.
Okay. So can I have a motion?
And the motion is to support Harbor Management sending. I don't know.
Correct.
You want to lay it out?
The Harbor Management. Yeah. We would send a letter to Deep outlining the reasons that Jeff Stedman stated, that we have no objection to PYC maintaining the floats, that we continue to own the tackle, and that we would have the opportunity to review the application, once it officially comes before us.
Here, here.
And that it's outside the federal waterway, as Jeff mentioned.
Right, with the two.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the tackle would be owned by the town.
Right.
Okay.
Do we meet? Kim, I'll make that motion if you would like.
Thank you, Ted. Ted moved.
I'll second it.
Do I have
I'll
Jack
second
second? Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. All those
Kim,
opposed?
I think that Jeff has said this before, but I think it's worth saying that by doing this and having these mooring floats properly permitted and licensed, that there is nothing in the harbor as we're making applications for dredging in the future that is in any way questionable. And we can, in good faith, now make representations about everything being properly documented in our harbor. I think that's an important thing for us to acknowledge here.
Absolutely, very important. Yes.
I need clarification on
any
that
other
statement.
New business? Any other items we need to take up this evening?
What was the clarification?
On your comment, there's nothing in the harbor that's not properly permitted?
There's nothing that we're aware of that isn't properly documented, and I don't think license is the right word, but Jeff, what's the right description for the certificate of permission? But every mooring
properly authorized.
Properly
authorized. There you go.
Right. And that Jeff made this point to us a year ago, that having anything that is not properly authorized can jeopardize our dredging filings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other business that we need to take up this evening?
New business. One quick thing, or hopefully it'll be quick, Kim. This is Ed.
Yep.
I've had several requests to eliminate or waive the July 15th mooring occupancy stipulation in our rules for this 1 year due to COVID, primarily due to COVID. I could go into the individuals, but one was due to not being able to fund his boat to get it out of the yard. The other two gentlemen were elderly and were very concerned about social distancing and getting help to and from their boats. So I know that South Benson Marina is also waiving that stipulation this year, so I'm hoping that Harbor Commission would do the same for Southport Harbor.
And are these people? And have you already given those people reason to believe that they don't have to have the boat in the harbor this year, or how did you leave it with them?
Each one of these, there's 3 individuals. Each of them called me personally to make the request, and obviously I can sympathize with their point of view.
Sure.
I told them that I understood and that I would take it to the Harbor Commission, but my gut feel, as you asked me how I left it with them, I left them with the impression that most likely we would waive that stipulation for this 1 year only.
Okay.
Kim, I'd like to
again,
make a motion
just
that
those
we
3 people.
considered giving the harbor master the opportunity to deal with these situations on a case-by-case basis rather than a blanket waiver, so that he can listen to the circumstances in the individual cases and make a decision about waiving the requirement for the July 15th placement of the boat on the mooring.
So that's Jack, that's your motion to give the harbor master the authority to waive our July 15th, got to have your boat in the harbor deadline on a case-by-case basis. Right. Do we have a second?
I would second that. It's Harry.
Harry seconds that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. All those opposed? Okay, Ed. So
Terrific. Thank you.
You'll do what you think is right, and hopefully folks will have the opportunity to enjoy the harbor this summer.
Kim, can I ask a question? I was not clear on one point. On the prior discussion about the commercial fishing, commercial mooring for the license for the commercial fishermen to have a permit. I'm sorry, the permit for the commercial fishermen. Are you writing the letter to him on behalf of the commission?
Yes.
Okay, I was not entirely clear who was writing that letter.
Yeah,
okay.
no, I will respond. I'll probably ask Jeff Stedman to help me. But yes, I think it's important for us to, when we get a letter like that, to even if we're not going to grant his wish, to be respectful and respond.
I totally agree. Okay, so, thank you.
Okay. Yep. You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions, business that needs to be attended to this evening?
Yes. Hi, Kim. Kim,
yes?
This is Eric Sunman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hey, I had a question about the status of the seawall at 1100 Harbour Road. Has that completely been finished?
It's not been before us for a very long time. And we, as I recall, and Jeff Stedman may need to help me on this, we wrote a letter to the town body that was next considering the issue with a list of questions and concerns that we had, and because we had questions and concerns, they were to consider our questions and concerns, but it was at that point beyond our jurisdiction. Is that
okay?
Right. Well, that's a very good question, and I don't know that we know the answer about the completion of the work, or the completion of the transfer of the property, because if that beach area has been transferred to the town, and that transfer has been completed, then the Harbor Commission is responsible for it, since it adjoins the lower wharf. So we need to find out what's taken place there, and if in fact it's necessary now for the Harbor Commission to think about some sort of regulation or policy for the use of that little beach area. No, it's a very good question, and I sorry that I don't know the answer to what the status is, but we can find out.
Can I just say that I'm there every day. It's completed. It's Brian McMahon's property we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. It's completed, and people are using the beach. I'm using my dogs on that beach just about every day. So I imagine that the transfer has happened. You can contact his attorney. I'm just thinking who it was now, or Jack Franson was involved. But obviously he went through every town body to get the approval, and did. And my view is that this is a very well done and tasteful project, and it was a great gift to the town, and is close to the original deed from the prior owner. So I didn't answer your question, but about the seawall, but I'm sure we can find out. Or can we save it for next meeting?
Yep.
Yeah,
sure.
I just didn't hear or know, and I didn't know what kind of impact that has for us and all. I was just curious because it seems like it was done the last couple months, but didn't know if there were further things that needed to be done.
I need clarification on who was the speaker who said that people are using the beach every day.
That's Sam Cargill.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Harry moved, and who? Can I have a second? Sam second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll reconvene in next month.
Everybody stay well, please.
Stay well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. You too.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.